talking about the Google Web Summit, and we've had part 1 with Jake Cain. I'm going to call this part 2 with Morgan.
We've been featured 3 times as Google success stories. My husband went to Washington, D.C. with Google. This year, 2024, we had Google photographers in our home taking photo shoot of us doing our kitchen renovation. And the next day, March 5th, and we lost 75% of our traffic and our revenue overnight.
Where were things at from whatever way you can give us a framework so we can kind of understand going into your perspectives?
Last year, we made like mid 6 figures. So I'll say more than 300, less than $500,000.
First impressions, arrival, tour, these kinds of things. Like, let's get into those things.
Like, you're looking at a room full of people who've been told our content is good, and you're telling me just make good content. It seemed like they really didn't know anything about Google. It was shocking what we had to teach them.
The kind of elephant in the room was the closing statement with Pandu Nayak, who, from all we know, is kind of in charge around search.
He's either a liar or he doesn't know how Google search works, and he's the head of Google search.
What approach would have been better for you?
It was very much like a funeral, very much like a sad memorial. There was no like funny stories to break up the sadness.
What are you doing either as a result of the helpful content update results, not the Web Summit specifically,
right,
or anything different that's come out of the Web Summit that you pivoted on or acted further on?
Right. So, I mean, my conclusion from this Web Summit was that...
All right, welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman, and today we are joined by Morgan McBride with charlestoncrafted.com. Morgan, welcome on board.
Hey, Jared. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you. We've had some fun exchanges over email to kind of build up to today. We're talking about the Google Web Summit, and we've had part 1 with Jake Cain. I'm going to call this part 2 with Morgan. Morgan, you were there as well. And so I'll say at the outset, if you missed the interview with Jake, we'll include in the show notes. You can go back and watch that. We are talking about the same thing, but I will tell you from talking with Morgan back and forth leading up to this, I think it's going to be a very different perspective, and what you took away from it will be very different. We are going to go through it in depth, though. Before we do, can you give us some backstory? Tell us about yourself, who you are, your website or your portfolio, and kind of where you are right now.
Yeah, sure. I'm Morgan. I have been blogging since 2012. So I blog in the DIY, home decor, crafting, woodworking niche. And I started blogging just because I was passionate about it. I was reading other people's blogs. I was doing crafts. And I thought this will be something fun to do. Ended up getting really into it. My husband started doing it with me. He was not handy at all when we started this. Now he's a really good woodworker and very handy. So it has been a lot of skill development in that way, as well as on the technical side. We did this for fun for a long time. I'll never forget when I got my first sponsored post. Someone offered us $100 to do a project about cat food, and I felt like I had won the lottery. I was getting paid to do what I loved already and what was already fun. I couldn't believe it. I told everyone I knew I got paid $100, and everybody was so excited. Nobody could believe it. It was like free internet money. This was probably 2014. So this was just like, you didn't know anybody making money on the internet. At least I did not. And so it has been just a wild ride since then. We got to the point where we were putting out 5 blog posts a week, and not just blog posts, like projects, crafts, we do things and write about it. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of time. And we had to be able to make more than $100 every other month if we got a sponsored post. We went to a blogging conference, which if anybody is familiar with the DIY home decor niche, is called Haven Conference. They still have it. It's in Atlanta every year. And that's where we learned that you could really make some money off of this. We met Mediavine. I had never heard of such a thing. I took an SEO class. I had never heard of such a thing. And next thing I knew, we were making a few $1,000s a month, doing the same thing we were already doing. So that's kind of my origin story. I quit my job in 2019. My husband quit his job in 2021. So we're both full-time on our website. And in 2020, I spun off some of our content because that was when everybody was telling you to niche down, focus, the niches are in the riches, focus on one thing. And our site had a lot of things. So I spun off my kids' crafts. I spun off paint color content, and I spun off houseplant content into their own websites. So I have 4 websites now. They're all on Mediavine. And they were all doing really great. That was a really great strategy for me and for my audience, because if you landed on a paint color post, then you got shown relevant other paint color posts, and you got shown opt-ins for paint colors and my products for paint colors, and not like a woodworking plan when that's not necessarily a good fit. So it was great for us until it wasn't, which was September 2023, helpful content update. My primary site was not hit at all, was not affected, but my 3 smaller spinoff sites went like 75% down in Google traffic overnight. Then starting in December, I still don't know what happened mid-December last year, but mid-December, my main site, Charleston Crafted, was hit and started this sort of ski slope down. And in my 12 years of running it, we had never been negatively hit by an update before. So that started in December. March was a huge drop. And then there was another huge drop in August, I think. And now everything is basically 0 on Google. So that's really fun. Luckily, I have content that's really good on Pinterest. So Pinterest is holding us up, YouTube, other things like that. And I'll talk about that later. But I was so excited to be invited to the summit because when that forum came out, the feedback forum, I spent over 2 hours filling it out with so many examples, but just like dumped my heart into how things just got ripped out. Like we always did what Google told us to do. Another fun anecdote is that we were a Google success story. I think you did. Jared, did you do the YouTube video where you showed Google success stories?
Spencer did, yeah.
Okay, that was Spencer. It was one of you. I was in that as one of the flops. And we've been featured 3 times as Google success stories. My husband went to Washington, D.C. with Google to talk to Congress people about the positive impact that Google has on our local economy. And my last fun fact about us is that March 4th, this year, 2024, we had Google photographers in our home taking a photo shoot of us doing our kitchen renovation for their economic impact report. We were their example for the state of South Carolina. You can look it up. We're still in it. Showing their wonderful impact on the local economy. And the next day, March 5th, is when Charleston Crafted was hit with that update, the March Core update, and we lost 75% of our traffic and our revenue overnight. So that was fun.
Hey everyone, Spencer here, founder of Niche Pursuits. Did you know that you can find and fix your orphan pages in the WordPress dashboard with Link Whisper? An orphan page is an article you've published with no internal links pointing to it from other articles on your site. Why should you fix your orphan pages? Well, it makes your site easier to crawl for Google, which can lead to more search traffic and improve your UX for your visitors. With Link Whisper, there is no need for expensive crawlers and tedious spreadsheets. Link Whisper simplifies the entire process. The orphan page dashboard in Link Whisper shows which pages need attention. It even recommends the perfect anchor text for your internal links. Ready to revolutionize your site's internal linking? Try Link Whisper today. Use the code PODCAST and get $15 off your purchase.
That, out of everything you said, just might be the soundbite that gets used in the introduction.
Yeah.
The irony is, we talked with Jake about the irony just of having this while launching AI overviews to the world and the irony there. But I mean, what you just said is probably, that was the larger irony, right? Of having this web summit while launching AI overviews to the world. The smaller independent irony, the irony of the individual small publisher is exactly right there, encapsulated what you say. Having you featured while getting completely slammed by their very own algorithm.
And they sent a photo, like it was a whole thing in our house. It wasn't even just like an interview. It was they sent a photographer and it was a whole thing. And we actually reached out to our contact with the success story program. And she said, oh, that's too bad, but my team doesn't talk to the Google search team. So I can't really do anything or help you with that. So that was just a sign early on that what we saw at this summit, that Google is so big and the teams do not talk to each other. So you can talk to one person and they really don't know what the other teams are doing, and they certainly can't impact your search results.
So before we kind of get into the day as it unfolded or the event as it unfolded, I thought I'd call out something that's very different already about how we're going to hear from you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when we had Jake on, Jake came at his content, he came at his publishing from an SEO standpoint, right?
Right.
And so he had a background in search engine optimization. And again, that's not to say necessarily that the content is better or worse as a result of it, just that he was pursuing topics and content and something from, as he put it, like finding gaps, looking for underserved topics, looking for things that were the long tail. From everything you just went through, it sounds like SEO has always been an afterthought. You've ranked well for very different reasons on Google. You've gotten a lot of Google traffic, but not really necessarily because of that SEO focus. Like, how would you say that has played in, and especially as it's built up to this with Google for you?
Right. So I do some like SEO research, not anymore, I've given up, but I did do some SEO research and did write some long tail content in more recent years. But for the first 10 years of our business, did not, and that remains not the focus. You can go and look at our website, and it's like I'm showing you a centerpiece that I made and a side table that my husband built, and it is real things that we really do, sometimes influenced by like trends or things we see going on, but not really based off search research. It is just based off of our real life projects we're doing that we want to share with others and teach them how to do.
Right. Okay. Well, I just think that's good to kind of underscore as we go into this, time, is that people were there with SEO focus and without SEO focus. People have been hit, obviously, with a focus on SEO and without a focus on SEO. It kind of hasn't been, this entire topic hasn't been focused specifically on a certain type of content creator, but maybe more the size or the type of content that the creator is creating.
Yeah, I definitely consider myself a blogger and not an SEO. Or I tell random people on the street that I own websites, because if you tell people you're a blogger, they think you're posting about your breakfast or whatever. But definitely don't consider myself an SEO. Yeah.
One more question before we get into it, just from a high level, whatever you're comfortable sharing, whether it's traffic or revenue or something, just to give people an idea of where your brand was at before the helpful content update. I mean, it was supporting both you and your husband, so it had to have been doing pretty well. You were a featured story for Google in terms of a success story, but where were things at from whatever way you can give us a framework so we can kind of understand going into your perspectives?
Yeah, last year we made like mid six figures, so I'll say more than 300, less than $500,000. We had Charleston Crafted had like 250,000 page views, and the other sites had matched that together, so that was a cool thing. And a lot of our traffic was from Google, never more than half, which I think is why I'm still sitting here today. Google was about half of our traffic, but not more than that. And our revenue is, a lot of it is Mediavine, but we also do affiliates. We sell digital products that do pretty well, and we do sponsored work. So we do have what has saved us is that we have a variety of income sources and a variety of traffic sources. But our income is down like 75% this year, and our Google traffic is down 99% on my smaller sites and 96% on Charleston Crafted. And our traffic overall is down by about half on Charleston Crafted.
Okay. So
pretty
doing
bad.
very well and now doing very bad.
I mean, not very bad. We're still fine. We can live, but I have to like peel back on the Disney cruises and, the generous donations to charity and all of my big spending. So
Yeah. And I think we'll talk a bit about kind of some of the adjustments that you're making and that sort of thing, maybe as we start to get towards the tail end. Let's roll up our sleeves here. Let's get into it. So, let's follow it maybe from a chronological timeline perspective. Like, tell us about arriving. Tell us about the first time. I believe you guys went on a tour. I feel I now was there, even though I wasn't there, because I've read the articles and talked to the people and stuff. But maybe first impressions, arrival, tour, these kinds of things. Like, let's get into those things for you.
So I have to start with the email inviting me to come from Danny Sullivan. Was so sketchy. It was like one line in a plain email. I had never interacted with him. I deleted the email. I just thought it was somebody who's going to try and sell me a backlink or something. So I deleted the email. He had to email me a second time, and I felt very uncomfortable with the whole thing. Honestly, I live in South Carolina. He was trying to get us to go to, or he did get me to go to Mountain View, California, which is about as far away as you can get for a day. I felt very uncomfortable, I guess, as a female, like flying across the country because some guy from Twitter sent you a plane ticket. I don't know. If I told my mother I was doing it, it would have been very sketchy. So it was kind of a weird opening. We were able to connect, luckily, on Twitter with other people who were going to be there. And that made me feel much more comfortable. But Google didn't do any of that. That was all something that we did ourselves. So I flew out there. And the day we got in, we had an opportunity to take a tour with Danny Sullivan on the Google campus. And I have a very different perspective of the tour than Jake did. That's why I wanted to bring it up. I've been to some cool places before. I used to work in hospital billing, and I went to this software company called Epic. They have a headquarters in Wisconsin, and that is some cool campus. They have a building that looks like a Harry Potter castle, and they have a deep space building that you go in. So I had expectations that Google was going to be really cool. This was just an office building. it was not, I mean, it had glass walls and it had a ping pong table and a snack bar, but it was just a regular office building. And the weirdest part was it was empty. There was no one there. There was nobody working at all. And it was really creepy. So we'd flown across the country to see this guy. I thought we were going to see something really cool, and he took us to an empty office building and walked around, and he felt very uncomfortable. We all didn't know each other. It was such a weird vibe. It really set the tone for I keep wanting to call it a weekend. It wasn't a weekend. It was a Tuesday, but it set the tone for like this really weird, eerie vibe that others have described as a funeral. I don't know. He took us out to walk past. I know Jake commented about the sand volleyball pit, and to me it was like covered with leaves and looked abandoned. Like, I don't know, it was such unexpected place. I thought it was going to be totally different. So that's to set the tone. We were in this really abandoned, plain old office building. The next morning we got up and we had a full day of this summit, and we went over to a different office building, and we started off with Danny giving us a presentation that I thought was super inappropriate for the group because it was who he gives to companies, kind of convincing them to do SEO and to do search, which I guess it was just a slide deck he had on his computer. It felt very like a misfit for the audience. But I wrote down some things that he did say. He opened it up and made sure to say the people in this group were far more impacted than we would have liked by this Google update. This was not our intent. We really are trying to make search better, but it is an imperfect system. You have good content. You are great creators. We want to get better at recognizing and rewarding this content. So those are direct quotes. That's exactly what he told us. And he said, I know it's hard to believe, but we really do want to highlight real human voices. That came up when we were talking about AI a little bit. But Danny was very apologetic the whole time. He was making a lot of self-deprecating jokes, and it was weird. It was just a really weird vibe. Like, I don't know, I've been to Google events before, and they shower you with swag, and they have these big meals and all this, and it was like they were trying to not make it feel that way, but almost to the point that it felt just very uncomfortable.
I'm curious, like, what approach would have been better for you, given all that you've been through, given that in many ways you're one of 20 representing thousands of online publishers that have been in the same position as you? Like, what do you think? And again, we'll get into it, but given that really it's no news, you know, like there's no tactical news to walk away with. It's not like they were announcing that the algorithm had been fixed, and at the end there were streamers and a party and you're ranking again, and they kind of could do a big reveal, right? Like, that would have been perfect. But given that a lot of this didn't have any tactical news, like what approach would have kind of made you a little bit more comfortable, a little bit happier, a little bit more kind of, what's the word I'm using, engrossed in what they were trying to get across?
Yeah, that is a good point. I think they were in a hard situation to make me happy. I went into it kind of with a bad attitude. But I think that if Danny was very apologetic, and he recognized that we were real content creators, that we really created good content, and that there were flaws in the search. Nobody else did that for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So I think having the rest of the team on the same page would have helped. I think that some of the people that they brought in, the Googlers that we spoke to, seemed like they really didn't know anything about Google. It was shocking what we had to teach them. And then the man that they brought in at the end, his name is Pandu Nayak, I believe. He was the head of search. They didn't actually introduce him. They just brought him in like he was Oprah. We should all know who he was. He was the worst, period. But he was very much like denying that there was a problem. So I think if they had gotten everybody on their team on the same page, that would have helped. And I don't know. It was just bleak. It was just a bleak group. It was a bleak situation. I don't know that there was any saving it, honestly, Jared.
It does sound like you're echoing a lot of what I've heard from others, including Jake. Like, Danny struck a very different tone than he has in the past. And Danny struck a very different tone in comparison to many of the others from Google that were there. And, you know, historically speaking, Danny has come from this community, right? He's started off as someone who's an online, you know, small publisher, that sort of thing. But I think there's this growing sentiment that even maybe Danny doesn't know what the heck's going on over there. Like, is that kind of echoing how you felt,
Yes.
or was it more that he was trying to get across Google's stance to you, and he was in the know on all that?
No, so it became very clear very quickly to me that they don't know how their algorithm works, and they don't know why we're getting kicked out. That was that was repeated to us, like, we don't know we know your content is good when we as humans look at it. We've been told by the Google success team that our content is good when humans are picking it.
Yeah.
Other people in there have been told by Danny. He read every one of our websites and said, all of this is good content. There's no reason you shouldn't be appearing in search. So that was hard to hear. Almost. It's almost like I would have rather them said, well, your content is bad because you're doing X, Y, and Z. But to hear your content is good. And then after that original presentation they brought out, trying to find her name, Elizabeth Turner, I believe was her last name, definitely Elizabeth. And she, poor thing, got up there. She was very sweet, very nice, but she got up there and she said, we have some big do's and don'ts for you guys. And this is what crushed me. Let's see if I can read it for you. Do focus on creating good content. Imagine someone arriving for the first time on your website. Would they recognize your expertise? If you do that, we will reward you in Google. And it was just like a slap in the face. I was the first one to raise my hand, interrupt her poor planned speech, and tell her that is the worst thing you could say to us right now. Like, you're looking at a room full of people who've been told our content is good. I know my content is good. It's always been rewarded as good. My readers tell me it's good. Google specifically has told me it's good. And you're telling me just make good content. It really showed they have a disconnect between the actual humans and what the algorithm is doing.
Right. And that's I mean, I guess that was probably Elizabeth Tucker.
Tucker, yes.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I was like, is it Tucker? Is it Turner? We featured her on the news podcast a couple times.
Yeah.
I think she
was so nice, but
right.
It struck a bad chord.
Yeah. Jake had a comment like, nice doesn't pay the bills.
Yes, that is true. Yeah.
Well, I know Jake had commented on some of the individual sessions with Google engineers, and he had some interesting things to say about that that were different from the conversations with Danny. What was your experience? What group did you get put in? What was your experience when it comes to kind of the breakout sessions with the Google engineers?
Yeah. So I was in the same group as Jake. Actually, we were put in the other group, which was fun.
Which is interesting because it's two very different things.
Yeah, DIY home decor. There was another home decor girl with us. There was a wedding guy, and there was Jake, who's just like got a bunch of random bird watching and baseball watching and like all the sort of lifestyle. They should have called it lifestyle. There was a group that was entertainment that was about half and half video game people and like celebrity gossip kind of people. Then there was a travel group, which was very heated. And then there was reviews, which it was snowboard reviewers and shoe reviewers and those kind of things. But our group was people who don't do reviews, share a lot of, I guess, tutorials or roundups or advice for hobbies. And it was very interesting. We were paired with Google employees from New York. So they had actually flown in from New York City. And so they were there just for this event, which was nice. That was better than some of the people who had been there earlier. I was talking to and found out they were like interns that had been working there a month. And they were very nice. As you said, nice doesn't pay the bills. They didn't really know very much about anything. These people who were in the small group at least knew more about search. But they really wanted to go off on different tangents about setting up a profile or getting you verified or, things that were not really the reason we were there. It was like they were trying to come up with all these things they could add to Google search. And it's like, we really just want our traffic back. We just want this classifier lifted. Everybody who's there has been suppressed. And so it was frustrating for us. And I know Jake was giving the refrain over and over again. It doesn't matter if you add all these things if we're still pulled out of search, if we're still not available to readers. So it was fine, but it was very frustrating. They really want to talk about Search Console a lot, what they could add to Search Console. I personally like Search Console. I think it's pretty good. I had a whole page of critique on GA4 I wanted to provide, and they just blew me off immediately and said, we don't do Google Analytics. That has nothing to do with us. No, which is fine. Different teams, but they didn't really want my feedback there.
Yeah, you talked about it, so maybe I'll go there. Like Jake
Yeah.
kind of talked about how his whole thing he wanted to harp on, he had prepared in his mind was this whole classifier thing, and
Yes.
he was clear, like everyone kind of agreed on that. So it's not like something that he thought of, and but like, what was your thing going into it? Like, did you have something you were trying to get across centrally, or was maybe on the flip side, was it more like, hey, you asked me here, I'm just going to free form, I'm going to
Yeah.
vent, I'm going to let you know how impactful this has been to me.
Right.
It's not my idea to come up with solutions for you. Your job to come up with solutions. I just need you to understand how impactful this has been on both an emotional level, a financial level,
Right.
a blogging level, etc.
Yep. So I actually asked that question to Danny when we did the tour on the first day. I said, we get 3 minutes to speak. And what would be the best use of my 3 minutes? Because I have a lot of things I could say. Should I get up there and cry about how we had to withdraw my son from his school because we could no longer pay the tuition? Or should I, what should I talk about? And he said, focus on that you are a real expert in how you are creating real content. You're not a robot. You're not pumping out AI. Because I really think a lot of these Google employees had a vision of what we were, that we were just cranking out these content machines and not creating everything with care. I mean, these travel bloggers go around the world and go places and take real photos and eat at the restaurants before they recommend them, and seeing that we had real experience. So my main goal going into it was to be a voice for so many. I figured it's so rare to get a seat at the table. When I get a seat at the table, I'm going to speak up and represent. I'm posted in the Mediavine Facebook group before I left and asked for people's stories to share. And I just was trying to really put a human face behind what they have done, because I think that these employees did not realize. And it was very, I don't want to say fun, because it's a little like, I'm evil to say this, but to look them in the eye and tell them how much you've been impacted made them very uncomfortable. These were engineers who are not used to maybe face-to-face with people. And so that was satisfying for me. And that was my focus, was that I share projects that I really do in my home, and I'm being outranked by WikiHow and Reddit
Right.
and all of these things. So that was kind of my message.
Yeah. I mean, anything else from the time with the engineers? Jake had commented they were very engaged. I think he also commented that, I believe it was this session, there were people watching from other parts of Google that weren't there and present, but were listening.
So they video watched our 3 minutes. They had people videotaping. We each got to speak our 3 minutes, which was interesting, seeing everybody's take. But this one, there were a lot of people there. We had maybe 5 Google employees in our circle. They were taking a lot of notes. It's just like I told you, I feel like they were going down the wrong trail. They were really focused on things that, I mean, I guess it would be nice to have a Google profile. If you looked at my website, for it to have my picture and a little bio, like if you look up an author, how it puts in Google, that would be nice. But that isn't why I'm here. I'm here because my traffic disappeared overnight, and my peers are still appearing in search. So I know they're not showing small publishers. It's just certain people were suppressed.
Do you ever get stuck in your business and wish you had someone you could turn to for solutions? Well, I think you should consider joining the Niche Pursuits community. You'll get weekly calls with experts on growing a successful online business, and you'll also get assigned a small mastermind group where you can solve your business problems as well as share your wins. For a limited time, I'll let you try out the Niche Pursuits community for just $1. Go ahead and use coupon code PODCAST at checkout in order to get your first month for just $1. Again, that's coupon code PODCAST. Go to community.nichepursuits.com today and see what it's all about. And maybe I'll see you on our call next week. Thanks a lot.
Let me ask you a point blank question, because I feel like I can get a true opinion out of you. So
Yes, you can.
I get that sense here about 25 minutes in.
Yeah.
Do you think they understood that there is a site-wide classifier on HCU hit sites? Do you think engineers walked away with that clear understanding, or do you think that they still think that, and I'm not implying that, I don't know a Google engineer when it comes to search, but there certainly has been a strong impression that they have not felt like there's a site-wide classifier. That was a central point everybody kept coming down on. Do you think the engineers walked away going, I think there probably is?
I hope that if they really listened and took it to heart, I hope that they went and investigated it. I have a feeling that engineers would not believe it out of my mouth. They would have to see it for themselves. And that was something that Danny was very insistent on, that they are doing a lot of testing. I'm trying to remember what they called it. They called it debugging, query debugging, and that we could send examples of, and kind of like we did with the original form, specific queries that were giving poor results that they can debug. Because I used to work in a little bit of coding, and this is what I asked him. And this is what made me think they don't know what's going on with the algorithm. I said, when you get results, I used to work in coding at a hospital. Let's say we ran a query to find all the men who went to cardiology in the last 3 years in this zip code. If I knew someone was supposed to be in my results and they did not appear, you would, comment out the code line by line until you figured out which line was throwing this guy out, and then you would fix it, and then you would add it back, and now your code works. I asked him, why can't you do that? Why can't you put me in for this result, go through the code line by line, let's see where I'm getting kicked out, and then either help me make that change, put it in Search Console as a flag saying, oh, you're being kicked out because you are doing this, or you are not doing that, or your ad density this, or whatever it is, so that I can fix it, or you guys can fix your code, whichever end it's on. And they said that's not how it works. That's not how algorithms are. We cannot see line by line details like that. We can't troubleshoot it that way. So that made me feel like they can't fix their algorithm. They have to just make big changes to it and see how it shakes out.
To that end, because that was a resounding theme that people walked away with. And so a lot of people have gone to machine learning as a big reason for that. We know that machine learning is a big part of how Google's algorithms work. Was machine learning talked about or discussed, whether at the engineer level or on the higher level in some of these other conversations that were happening at the summit?
Nobody directly said anything about machine learning. No, it was kind of, as we kept saying, why can't you fix the algorithm? They just kept saying, we can't. We cannot physically go in there and do it. I've since read a lot about zeros and ones and all this different stuff. So I believe them that it must be machine learning, but that was never confirmed.
I glossed over a bit, and I didn't mean to, so I want to maybe give us a chance to go back. There were those creator presentations, the 3 minutes each, right? And with 20 people in the room, that had to have been an hour or two of...
It was an hour, yeah.
I don't want to say very different takes, but like a lot of different creators bringing different angles at it. What stood out to you about that? And I do realize I'm going a little bit back in the timeline here, but I didn't give it the space it needed. What stood out to you? We kind of heard what you focused on. We know what Jake focused on, but there were 18 other creators there. What else stood out?
Most all the women cried. It was very emotional. Some people chose to focus on their personal impact. Some people were just very angry. A lot of people talking about big brands like Forbes and all of this. But the resounding thing was that everyone who was there was writing about their passions. And this was a very personal thing. A lot of us put our full identity into our work, whether we are our work or just seeing that success has built you up to be such a part of your identity, that this has been just so traumatic for everyone, and being devalued and the emotional impacts of that, as well as financial. But it was very like a sad hour. It was very much like a funeral, very much like a sad memorial. There was no like funny stories to break up the sadness like you might have at a memorial. It was just sad, angry. A lot of people had written out full speeches that they prepared. Some people winged it, but it was very clear everyone's passion, everyone's humanity. Some people spoke up for others. There was one woman in particular who listed out like 5 or 6 other websites that were not even her own, with as specific examples that had shut down or been very hardly impacted. It was sad, man. It was rough. Yeah.
The kind of elephant in the room was the closing statement or the closing chat with Pandu Nayak, who, from all we know, is kind of in charge around search.
Right. It was a terrible choice to bring him. I'm sure, let's throw it out there because I've said everywhere else, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but he was a really, really bad choice to speak at all. They should not have brought him at all. I don't know what Danny was thinking. And Danny was like hugging on him, so I guess they're friends. But it was a really, really bad choice to end with him. because I feel like with the conversations, people were really feeling heard by some of the engineers. And then we bring in this final panel, and this was the end. Like, there was no closing after this. This was the end. And it was him and Elizabeth again. And he just said, the big thing, I can't get over anything, is that he said there is no classifier. There are not site-wide penalties, only page-level queries. And we were like, especially Jake, I know Jake spoke up at this time. Yes, there is a site-wide classifier. I can tell. You can type in my site name. It doesn't show up. Other people are showing up, and I'm not. Like, I fell off on one day. I fell off for all queries. It wasn't just one. And it was really bad. Pondu said, I cannot predict what will happen when asked if there was any hope to recover. I cannot predict what will happen. We are just focused on doing great things for our users. And I wrote down in my notes, hopeless and demoralizing, because his whole speech left me feeling hopeless and demoralized about search. Because if the guy in charge doesn't care, it doesn't matter if I sat at lunch with an intern and convinced him that I'm a real person writing real things, he should look into it. He's doing what his boss is told by his boss to do. And I really, really got the impression that they don't think that search is that bad. They're sorry that you and me and the people in the room are impacted negatively, but they still kind of saw us as like, you're kind of like a spammer, out of here. Our results are still fine. They're good enough for the user, and we are focused on the user. He never said anything positive about creators, anything about your work is good. We value you. You are important. He just said, we're focused on making it great for our users. And there is no site-wide classifier. So it felt like we were being lied to and gaslit and left on a very negative note. But we did go straight to the bar after that. So
I guess a follow-up question there, and I realize this is totally speculative and just your opinion, but I think you were in the room, so you get the luxury of reading, faces and body language and unspoken things and all that. I mean, I guess the question I would ask is, do you think that he really believes there is no site-wide classifier and was speaking from a place of knowledge, truth, and that means certain things about the algorithm? Or do you think he's aware of it and this was more of the kind of Google messaging robot system at play, saying there isn't a site-wide classifier, all I can talk about is our users, et cetera, et cetera? Which side of it do you think it ended up, which side, if you had to predict, was he on that one?
Well, he's either a liar or he doesn't know how Google search works, and he's the head of Google search. So I would lean towards liar, but it's hard for me to say for sure. I do know that when the helpful content first came out, it said in their documentation that it was a site-wide thing. So, and then they quietly took that away. I think that the engineers and everyone really didn't think it was site-wide until they started looking at things. So I think that is the line that they are saying, it is not site-wide. But you cannot look at the examples that we showed them and the things that we talked about and not question that in some way.
Jake mentioned at one point that I think he said, Danny, they regretted calling it the helpful content update. And that obviously has become a very triggering term for pretty much everyone in the online community that writes on the internet, right? Let me ask you this. If they had long ago, 2022, which is actually when it first launched, but 2023, the impactful one, if they had called it the this is how our algorithm works update instead of the helpful content update, and the results had gone the way they have gone, do you think you'd be as frustrated? And do you think this for this summit would have been as frustrating? Do you think the fact that they called it the helpful content update and it's almost this backwards slam on everyone who was impacted, do you think that has a role in it? Or do you think that it doesn't really matter? It is what it is. And the fact that they have, kind of destroyed a lot of small publishers is really actually the root of the problem.
Yeah, obviously I would be pissed either way that they ruined my business and ruined my life. But the problem with calling it helpful was that, so prior to the helpful content update, I was not a part of SEO Twitter at all. I had an old Twitter account, but I never looked at it. And after the helpful content update, some people told me that was how I could follow what was going on. So that's what I got on. And the problem with calling it helpful really led to it hurting my self-esteem and me taking it very personally. Because as I've said, this is content things that I create with my bare hands and write about and take pictures. I don't have a team. I don't have employees. Like, this is me. It is a complete reflection of me. And to say that it is unhelpful means that I'm unhelpful. And this has really kind of defined my life for the last decade. And calling it unhelpful when my whole website is about helping people renovate their home, it was like, it sent me into a spiraling depression. It gave me a lot of identity issues. So many SEO bros on Twitter were coming at me and saying, you know, well, look at your website and look at the one that's there, the result that is beating you now, and just think, why are you not as helpful as them? And it really just was horrible mentally on me. And I know I spoke to other people at the event that felt the same way. It had just been a mental, because of the word helpful, it had been just very, very hard mentally. I do want to share that they said they don't want to use the word helpful anymore. They want to use the word satisfying, which if you watch The Office, I turned to the girl next to me and I said, "You've always left me satisfied and smiling." But it was, satisfying is not really any better. I mean, I guess a little bit. I understand they're trying to satisfy the user, might be better than helpful, but satisfying. So it turned into the whole day telling Google that their response was not helpful or satisfying. So we did get that little jab into them a little bit, but no progress was really made.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. I mean, you can just hear it on in the voices of publishers all over, you know, how awful it's been for their business, but really how awful it's been for kind of this third party to accuse, individual publishers about what is and what isn't helpful, and
especially
then
when peers, like other bloggers that have been blogging this whole time with me, putting out very similar content, were not hit. Then it's like, wow, that makes me feel bad compared to them. And when you talk to them, they don't understand the scope. So they say like, "Oh, you must be doing something spammy. You must be doing something weird. Just stop whatever you're doing and you'll be fine." And so it's created this weird vibe within the community, which didn't exist before in the like blogger community in that way.
I've likened it in the past when talking about it with different peers to like almost like taking a college class, where the final paper was something you wrote about some topic, right? And I remember this was a poli-sci class, and so we were, I had my cohort of friends I studied with, and like we went to class every day with. We took notes together. We reviewed all the notes together. We kind of had the same approach and take on the paper. We would share the paper and talk, "Oh, you could make that better. Oh, change that. Oh, here's what I thought about." And then we submitted our papers. I remember I got like a C, and my colleague got an A. And I was like, "Okay, well, why did I get a C?" And they were like, "Well, it just wasn't as good." And I'm like, "Okay, well, what wasn't as good?" "Well, it just wasn't as good, like it just didn't have the impact." And, so all these echoes of things where I'm like, man, I'm going to math. A plus B equals C every time. And if I don't get it right, I don't get it right.
Right. Yeah, you just aren't satisfying, Jared. Yeah.
Exactly. So I hear a lot of that in what you're saying. Maybe let's spend the last few minutes talking about where does this leave you? Where have you transitioned? You kind of said at the outset, like, hey, thankfully you had a lot of traffic from other sources. You had a lot of revenue from other sources. So what are you doing either as a result of the helpful content update results, not the Web Summit specifically, or anything different that's come out of the Web Summit that you've pivoted on or acted further on?
Right. So, my conclusion from this Web Summit was that they know that we are creating helpful content. They know that it is not appearing in search. They know that there is a disconnect there. They do not know how to fix it. They might work on it. They might not. If the boss doesn't think it's an issue, I have it really hard to believe that these engineers' time is going to be spent changing this. So I think if they accidentally fix it for some people and algorithm changes moving forward, then they will. I do not think they are going to reverse this in any way, shape, or form. I don't think they could reverse it if they really wanted to. And Danny made sure to say, September traffic is not coming back. Even if you have this classifier, if it was lifted because of changes in the SERPs, in the layouts, in the AI overviews, and all of this, your traffic would be lower either way. So while I do think that search traffic is an important part of any balanced website's traffic sources, You cannot build a site depending just on that today, and you have to have a plan to diversify both in your traffic and in your income. So we're leaning heavily onto Pinterest right now, but Pinterest, I've been on Pinterest for over a decade. They do algorithm updates too, and it can be just like Google overnight. You could lose everything. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happens soon with all of the AI mess that's being spammed over there. I think it's important that you think about who your user is and how they like to consume information. So for me, because I am actually doing things and my target audience is kind of like me, like women or some men in their 30s to 40s trying to do projects in their home, I think a lot of that audience is video right now, video consumption. So we have really pivoted to a video first model. We're taking videos with our crafts and projects and starting there, still creating blog posts, but I'm not writing these long blog posts with sections and FAQs and all of that anymore. Forget it. You get 2-paragraph intro and a supply list and a tutorial and a bunch of pictures, which are mostly screenshots from my videos. And that's it. That's what I'm doing for now. If things reappear from Google, maybe I'll start writing some of that long tail keyword stuff again or writing more robust articles. But for now, there's no point to it. And when you send people from Facebook or Pinterest on their phone, they don't want to read all that anyway. So I think it's probably better for the user experience. But focusing on where your audience is and how you can reach them in the way they want to consume content and then how to monetize that's the tricky part, because the video just doesn't monetize as well as the blog does.
Yeah. What wins have you had, since this started, since September 2023? Have you seen some gains in other areas that you put focus in, or like what's trending towards your audience resonating with now that you're not so focused on the website blogging side of things?
So Pinterest, we're still putting out 4 articles a week on Charleston Crafted, so we're not stopped writing whatsoever. But I started in January a push for Pinterest. My main website is up, I think, 200% on Pinterest traffic compared to last year. And one of my small secondary sites is up like 10x or more. Pinterest has done very well for that. Video, my husband started a new Instagram account in February, and he's got 48,000 followers already. Primarily there using the link DM feature to send people to either blog posts, digital product, that's woodworking. So we sell woodworking plans, and then affiliates, sending people to, tools or things to purchase. So that's been a big win. And YouTube is going well for us. It's not like gangbusters, but it is, when we create the video, we share it everywhere. So it's growing steadily over there.
It's interesting to think about, I do a lot of interviews, right? One a week. So I talk to a lot of creators, many of whom have had to pivot away from a primarily SEO strategy into something different, right? Traffic from Pinterest, traffic from YouTube, traffic from Instagram or other socials or email marketing, these sorts of things. And, to take it all the way back, like you talked about it, how you've been doing this for a very long time, right? Like the growth takes time.
Yes.
And I almost feel like we're at the beginning of all these creators' pivots into other areas, and it's going to take time to get really big success stories out of it. Like we're getting early success stories, like your husband's Instagram account. You're 200% up on Pinterest, actually 10x up on a different Pinterest account. But to really get these big wins, these long-standing wins, it feels like it's going to take some time because so many people had to pivot, and it's been a year plus, right? It hasn't been a decade, which really it took you a decade to get your brand to where it was before Google pulled out the rug from underneath you,
Right. I definitely agree. I have a girlfriend that makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a month off of affiliate links from Instagram. And so I started a similar Instagram thinking I could just blast out affiliate links, target busy moms, go for Amazon. And it has been a very humbling experience because I am used to being successful at what I do and having to start at zero. It is an uphill battle. They say like the first 1,000, the first 100,000 is the hardest. It is definitely a battle, but I would say anybody who's in this situation, you have to decide, are you trying to make a long-term business or were you just trying to make a quick buck off of SEO? If you were just trying to make a quick buck off SEO, I would move to something else totally. I would abandon the website. I would, go do your Amazon videos or go do, pick a new line. This is going to be a lot of work. If you are trying to build a long-term brand, you got to come up with other ways to reach people with that brand, whether it's creating a physical product. We're talking about creating a physical product for next year, woodworking product, which will be really exciting if we can get it to work. Digital products. I'm a big proponent of digital products. We make several $1,000s a month off of selling PDFs, which is wild to me, but it really does. Like, small sales add up, but you got to work at it. Whether you want to work with brands, I mean, there's a lot of leg in that, but you do have to put in the work and you have to get there. It's not going to happen quickly. And even if you built up this Google site, it's kind of worthless now. It's not going to help you pivot to anything else. You have to decide if you're a business owner or if you're just kind of like a hustler and follow the right path.
Any final thoughts? I mean, I'm sure so many, right? Like, you're like, how much time do you have? But any final thoughts on, just all of our conversation points?
Yeah.
It's kind of an open floor in that question.
Yeah. I know a lot of people have had a really bad year, and it's been really hard, really emotional. I want you to know, if that was you, if you're not a spammer, not a scammer, you're a good content creator, your content is good. This is not a reflection of your content. Google is broken. They know they are not surfacing the best content. They're trying to figure it out, but you have to move on. Think of this as like a bad ex-boyfriend who keeps calling you back saying, hang around, we'll be coming back. Oh, maybe I'll be back. You can't wait around for that you up text coming in the middle of the night. You have to move on. And if it comes back later, let them go. And if they come back, it's meant to be, or whatever the thing is people say. You have to mentally move on. Whatever that looks like for you, mentally move on. It's been a year. You can't be sad for any longer. Get excited find something that makes you excited in this business, whether that's recording videos, whether that's creating a product, whether it's totally pivoting to teaching people how to do something instead of showing them articles. Whatever you can do, find something that gets you excited and start over. You did it once, you can do it again.
Yeah. Yep. Well, good words, Morgan. Thanks for coming on and sharing everything. I mean,
for sure.
It's, you summed it up best. It's been a rough year for people who have gotten a lot of traffic from Google historically by creating helpful content that's got both the business implications and the emotional implications all rolled into one big, ball of wax, I guess as the phrase goes. So I think you've done a great job coming on and addressing the business side of things while also addressing perhaps a lot of the emotional side of things that people are feeling. And that's a lot harder to put into words, or at least that's a lot harder to share on Twitter or tell your family member, like that side of it. So I think it was really great to have you on to talk about the summit, but also just to hear you give voice to a lot of the emotions that I'm sure a lot of us are feeling, me included, by the way, because I'm right there with you, as a content creator and stuff. So I know you're not really, you got your website, but if people want to connect with you, is that the best place to do it? Anywhere else people can kind of connect with you?
If you want to buy some woodworking plans, I got them. But if you're into DIY and home decor, check us out, Charleston Crafted. Otherwise, I'm on Twitter, Charleston Craft. I guess my letters got cut off. I don't know. But on Twitter, I just complain about Google and SEO. So you can follow me there if you're interested.
Morgan, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's great to have, I almost called it part 2, right? A part 2 on the Web Summit. I'm pretty proud. We got 10% of the audience there has now been on the Niche Pursuits podcast to kind of give a different side of things. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Jared.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the Niche Pursuits podcast. I just wanted to remind you that if you are ready to start building smarter, faster, and easier internal links, you should check out Link Whisper. You can get $15 off Link Whisper when you use the coupon code PODCAST at checkout. Head over to linkwhisper.com and use the code PODCAST in order to save $15. Thanks again for listening.